Welcome to Reigniting You, the show that explores a variety of topics and timely issues for making successful mid to late career transitions with a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment for the next phase of your career and life, regardless of your age. Now, here's your host, Lisa Downs.
Welcome to Reigniting You, where we talk all things career transition for those age 40 plus. I'm Lisa Downs, Seattle-based career and retirement transition coach. Great to be here with you today, and our producer, Eric. Hey, Eric, how are things today?
Hey, good afternoon. We're smack dab in the middle of the spooky season here.
We are.
Are you a big Halloween person?
Not a huge Halloween person, but, it's always kind of fun.
It is kind of fun. That's probably the best way to describe it.
We have an electric pumpkin.
Oh.
That we plug in sometimes for our front window because we're lazy. So we don't get a jack-o'-lantern to carve much these days. We used to, and then one year we also decided to see how long it would take to sit out on our porch and rot.
Uh-huh.
So we did that. It doesn't take very long. It was pretty fun. So Chris, my husband, he'll still occasionally for Halloween on Facebook, he'll still post the picture of the saggy pumpkin that got all moldy and squished and gross. So yeah, I guess we're not big Halloween people.
I guess not, but it sounds like you have fun nonetheless.
We do have fun. Yeah. It's all right. Yeah, it's hard to believe, we're already rolling here into fall and
I know.
Mid-October already, and I kind of shudder because it's probably going to be, the holiday time is going to be upon us before we know it. But we've got a great show on tap for today. My guest is style and image expert Annette Bond, and so we'll talk with Annette a little bit later in the show. But first, though, thought I'd field some listener questions that Eric and I will chime in on here together that came in over the last few days. So thank you, folks, for that. So first question is, Bonnie in Port Townsend shares that she keeps hearing about how you should have a unique value proposition when you're looking for work and asks, what do I do to find or know what it is? Thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, that is a good suggestion because we always want to be talking about, when in job search, be talking about what is that value you bring to an organization and what might set you apart from other candidates going after the same role. So that is good advice, a good recommendation. So, to help you really figure that out, I would recommend, focus on what are some key accomplishments that you've had. Think about specific outcomes or results that you've gained as a result of work that you've done. So the roles that you've had to date or, over time. What are some key results, key outcomes, accomplishments you're proud of? What are any of those transferable skills? I talk about that all the time, but what are those skills that you can transfer that you could also promote in terms of what sets you apart potentially from other people? And then, what is the, thinking about the type of work. So, the type of work that you enjoy doing. And so that's really, if you kind of imagine, classic Venn diagrams. So you've got three circles that intersect. So the first one, focus on what is the work that you enjoy doing. The second circle, ask, well, what is needed? So what's needed in the marketplace or what's needed in the world? And then the third circle is really about, well, what can you be best at or at least pretty good at? And the intersection of those is kind of your sweet spot when it comes to what is that unique value that you provide. But just some suggestions there, but, really think about what are those key things that you've done and how can that help you, tee things up for a potential employer in terms of why they should hire you or at least pay attention to you to get you in the door for an interview. So Eric, what do you think? What would you say your value proposition is that you provide?
Yeah, that's an interesting term that I wasn't really familiar with before. Yeah. So another great question from Bonnie. And my unique value proposition, I like to think anyway, is experience and quality and audio production. So something in that kind of Venn diagram, I think.
So the type of work that you do, it's such a unique, specialized skill set that not a lot of people have, and highly technical, and you also have to be really good with your time
Yes.
Back timing things and juggling everything. So that's great. Yeah, I think for me as well, these days, kind of in the coaching world, of course, there's a lot of coaches out there, and it's become a very popular industry and profession. And, for a while, it's like anyone is like, oh, I've done this, I'll go be a coach, right? And hang my shingle. And
Right.
so, there's a lot of competition out there in the marketplace, but I try to set myself apart by the type of coaching I do or work
Hmm.
I do that is really focused for older workers and people figuring out retirement time. And there's not a lot of us out there currently who do retirement coaching.
Yeah,
So,
you're
yeah,
very specialized as
specialized.
well. Yeah. Which, when you need something done, you can't go wrong with a specialist
Yeah,
for that
yeah.
particular thing.
So I've kind of, tried
Yeah.
to do that as well as be really specific on like my package offerings and be
Hmm.
very concrete because it also is a profession that can be a little amorphous in terms of, well, what
Right.
do I get for the money? And, trying to be a bit more concrete for folks too. And with that, and, here's the plan and here's what we do week by week and kind of delineate that out too is how I try to set myself apart.
That's smart.
But sometimes, yeah, when I meet someone or networking and people say, oh, I haven't, you're the first person I've heard who does that, type of coaching. So I'm like, well, that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Blaze a trail.
You found your niche.
There we go. Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks, Eric. And next we have a question from Annika in Seattle who says she has a friend who recently retired. So speaking of retirement, and seems to be struggling with not having work to do anymore and is at a loss for what to do with themselves. And she asks, well, how can I support them without pushing? Well, thanks, Annika, for that. Appreciate that question. And yeah, I think it's important, in that position where we want to be supportive and, we have a friend or family member who's going through something and we're sensing that it's a bit more difficult for them. We want to be in that situation where we're supportive, but yeah, not pushing. We don't want to make assumptions, that they might appreciate appreciate that. So thanks for asking that question. My best recommendation is to just do what you can to get them open up and talking to you. You could raise it in terms of what you're observing, like, hey, I noticed you're bringing this up a lot, or you just seem kind of down since you've retired and, just wondering what's up. Is there any support that you need? So, leading it into that way can be helpful. It's a way to ask without pushing. And then, if they are receptive to that, then you could also, encourage them by, you could make some suggestions in terms of that they talk with other people who have been retired for a while. Maybe there's folks in their circle or their network who they know who's just gone through this or are in the same situation. I think it's always helpful to talk with someone who's been there and done it and can be, that can be really supportive or encourage them to research ways that they could get involved in the community or do volunteer activities or, see what is out there online for people's stories. There's some wonderful books out there too. A lot of great books, too many to mention. But if you just do a search on Amazon or Google books about retirement life, there are a ton of great books out there. And so that, talk about those non-financial aspects of it and things to consider and what you can do if you're struggling with it. So, I would recommend those outlets for him but feel it out first. You could also broker introductions for him too. So people who are in your circle, that could help as well. But, just make the recommendation first. Feel him out, in terms of raising it, feel him out. And, is he willing to be open and talk with you about it and just kind of see where it leads. But yeah, I would say, you're wise not to push it. But you could also, have some resources on tap. You could recommend coaching, counseling, that type of thing as well. Because talking it out with someone who's supportive can be really helpful, I think. So thank you for that. Next is a question from Alonzo in Burlington who shares that he keeps procrastinating when it comes to reaching out to people to network and wonders why that is and what he can do about it. Thanks, Alonzo, for asking that. Procrastination is one of those classic barriers. So it's a great way for us to engage in a little bit of self-sabotage. So, if you find that you are procrastinating about something specific like that with networking or just doing any other activity when it might come to job search, what I recommend is first try to figure out the source of where the procrastination is coming from. So when you think about networking, what is it in particular about it that has you hesitant or wanting to procrastinate? So is it reaching out to people, thinking that you're doing that cold? Is it that you're not quite sure the questions to ask, the words to use, kind of the script, so to speak, for how to phrase a request? Is it that you don't really know where to look in terms of for people to network with? So try to pin it down first in terms of where exactly is the source of the procrastination. You could do that there's a technique called the 5 whys. It's very popular when it comes to project management. People working with processes and systems like to use the technique to figure out why a process broke down or, why something went wrong, or why is there a bottleneck. So you could use that. So it's basically asking yourself why 5 times in a row. So you could say something like, well, I'm procrastinating about networking. Why is that? Well, because I don't really know what I would say. Okay, well, why is that? Well, I haven't really given it any thought or have a script prepared. Well, why is that? Well, I've been taking time to do this and this. So that's the idea, is you ask yourself why 5 times to try to get at the root of what's really going on. So that's something I would suggest there, but check your habits. Are there any bad habits that you've gotten yourself into? We all have them. But is there a way to mix up your routine and change some habits so that way you're more likely to follow through with the networking? And then motivation. So, what are you motivated by? So for some people, it's a reward, right? So if I contact these 3 people by this particular time, then I'll give myself some chocolate or, whatever that reward is that works for you. But what's kind of the carrot you can dangle in front of yourself too that can help you be motivated to do that. But I get it. We always put off those tasks that we don't enjoy. So it's perfectly understandable. So thanks for asking that, Alonzo. Hope that's helpful. So Eric, what do you think? What are your thoughts on these last couple questions? I thought they were pretty good ones.
Yeah, great questions. Well, I got to say that I love to procrastinate. So I am with Alonzo on that. I don't actually love procrastinating, but I must deep down love it because I do it all the time.
Yeah.
And it is a hard thing to get past. Even if sometimes there's stuff that you want to do deep down, but just for whatever reason, you just get these little blocks, and trying to get over them, it can be tough. But I liked your advice on the 5 whys. I feel like I got to be careful if I was doing that not to be annoying to myself. You know what I mean? By why? It's
Why?
Yes, you know why. But yeah, I mean, great advice. Any little step you can do. And I often find also if I actually just start doing stuff on my list that needs to be done, there's something that I need to do that I'm willing to do at any time. So if I start doing something else, and then sometimes that just gets me in the groove of moving along on things, and then I get to that thing that I've been procrastinating on just because now I'm in the habit, now I'm working, now I'm moving along. So,
Yeah, for sure. And we call it in our house, it's probably not politically correct anymore, but we call it eating frogs.
Eating frogs.
So we'll say, how'd it go today? Oh, I ate 2 frogs today. Yay. Proud of ourselves. It's usually those things that we just find tedious.
Yes.
That just aren't very fun or exciting, but it's the stuff you have to do.
Right.
So, yeah. But I think we all do to some extent. So
I've never heard of the eating frog
eating
thing before.
frogs.
I'll have to look
Don't
up
know where that came
the
from.
derivation of
Don't want to
that.
think
That's
about
great.
it. But yeah, but there we go. Well, thanks, Eric. And a reminder that if you have a career transition related question, you can email it to reignitingyou@gmail.com or leave me a voicemail at 360-436-6496. That's 360-436-6496. I'll then answer it on a future show. And it's time for our first break. So when we come back, I'll introduce our guest for the show, Annette Bond, who's here to share her story and talk with us about how we can best embody our personal brand.
Are you feeling challenged or frustrated without a plan for what's next in your career and life? Are you seeing writings on the wall for needing to make a mid to late career change and don't know how or what to do? Coach Lisa Downs of New Aspect Coaching can guide you to what's next, providing a fresh perspective and supporting you to create a clear and compelling vision for your future and a plan to move forward. Call Lisa at 425-216-3015. That's 425-216-3015. New Aspect Coaching, fresh perspectives for your career.
Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that focuses on all aspects of making career transitions for your mid to late career. A note that you can catch the show Voices of Experience with host Paul Casey this Wednesday at 3 p.m. here on KIXI. Voices shines a light on people with experience in their fields of travel, public affairs, adventure, health, and fitness, with an emphasis on sustaining your own business. That's Voices of Experience Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Annette Bond. The CEO and founder of Definitive Style, Annette Bond is committed to empowering successful women to dress with ease, be on brand, and get noticed. Annette combines her 30 years of style and image expertise as a certified image consultant and More Alive with Color expert. She is one of only 50 women in the U.S. certified in the niche of fashion feng shui. She also brings her professional background in marketing and communications to her work and believes that style begins with the woman, not the clothes. She created the Reveal Your Radiant Style Academy to transform a woman's wardrobe from the inside out. Hi, Annette. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's lovely. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And, I always like to start with guests of learning more about your own career path and journey. So tell us a story of how you have wound up in your current work.
Okay. So, honestly, as a young girl, I had a passion for style and style and fashion. And I combined that with my professional education of communications and marketing. And I began my career, so got out of college and went to work for a family-owned business who owned several boutiques. And I came in obviously as a young 20-year-old out of college, and I was there to mentor with the owner to learn all facets of the retail fashion business. And what was interesting, again, as I said, as a young girl, I had this passion for fashion. But what I realized as I started this path is women weren't so interested in the fashion as they were with being confident. And so here I was in my 20s, mentoring very successful career women in the 30s to 50s, and I was teaching them how to dress. So that's where it kind of really all started. And then from there, I went to a large department store kind of back in the day before stylists and image consultants were kind of the big thing. And I was the wardrobe and color consultant for the store. I then took that experience. I had moved to Seattle and was pregnant with my first son and was introduced to Mary Kay Cosmetics. I thought I was going to sell lipstick, but really what I found out, it was all about empowering women, leadership, learning really how to run a business. And then I kind of took all that 20 years of experience, if you will, and Definitive Style was born. So it was really kind of packaging my gifts, my strengths, my career experiences, and my love for working with women. And so that's how Definitive Style came about.
That's great.
Yeah.
And along throughout all of that, what would you say is a key lesson or two that stands out?
I'm kind of reflecting back to one of the guests who asked a question, and I still remember purchasing a book as I was going into Definitive Style, and the book was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. And so I think, honestly, that has been, when I say a lesson, is I've always kind of dipped my toe in, even though I'm scared to death. It's like, okay, feel the fear and do it anyways. That's one lesson. Another lesson I would say is I've always really valued in being the best version of me, which is really what I also take my clients on, that same journey. But it's realizing and acknowledging, what are your strengths? What are your gifts? And really owning those. And when I started Definitive Style 10 years ago, I remember vividly saying to myself, I thought, I'm going to start this business and I'm going to only use my gifts, my strengths. I'm not going to try right now. I'm not going to try to do something I'm not good at, and really stay in that lane. And I will, I think we're always learning new things along the way, but really always acknowledging, what are your gifts? What are your strengths? And keeping that path in front of you.
Thanks. And I love that piece too about the kind of, when you've got the fear, just acknowledging that and pushing through, no matter what. To me, that's the great classic definition of courage. So it's,
Exactly.
putting yourself out there, because I think, it's like that old adage of, with great risk comes great reward. So important to take those smart risks, as I like to say, smart risks, calculated
Yes.
risks, and
Yes.
push through
Yes.
that fear. And
Yeah.
in addition, to those lessons, what else have you found to be particularly helpful when it comes to career and life transitions that you've made? So whether it was certain decision points or other resources.
I remember my mentor when I was with Mary Kay Cosmetics, and I remember her saying to me, a good student is always, actually, how do I want to say this? A good student becomes a good leader. And, I've always held on to that. And I think it's so true in whatever we do. It's, being a good student, whatever is going on, if you're trying something new or you're going into a new career or a new business, because that's how we get good at what we do. One of the big things that really was a huge lesson for myself was over 2020. My business was solely in Seattle, in person. And so when COVID came, it was like, okay, guess what? I'm going to go back, and we almost kind of hate that word of, okay, now I have to pivot, right?
Hmm.
But what was interesting for myself was, I actually wanted my business to be more virtual, more online. But as it was, I had a lot of pushback. I mean, when I say that is, women would say to me, oh my gosh, I would never work with you virtually. Like, why would I do that? And so what happened is, through 2020, I really did have to decide, how was I going to work my business online? So I'd already, if you will, kind of dipped my foot into doing an online program. And so I really got to work the minute I was able to, and started developing a program that I could deliver online. So I have to say, if that has been my biggest learning experience, I will say probably ever, is taking a business that was solely in person to online.
That's such a good lesson, great
Yeah,
example of being able to be nimble and flexible and make that change when you need to, as, circumstances come about that we can't really control. So
right.
I think that's a wonderful lesson and a great example. And then I'm also curious about, who in your life has been a big positive influence that, where they've, been someone that really, supported you, or that you just think back on and you, remember fondly, throughout your career?
I right now, I'm going to give my husband is number one. It's interesting. I never thought of myself when I go back in my career path, if you will, is I have been an entrepreneur for much of my life. And I've had a husband who has always been there, if you will, cheering me on. So I give him that credit. I give also credit to myself in the fact I've never um, reluctantly at all, I've always invested in myself. I've known that when I invest in myself, there's confidence that grows, there's new skills that come about. And so I guess I'll put that in the category of coaches, of having coaches who have really helped me along a path that I wasn't sure where I was going, right? And it was always a step ahead of me.
That's cool. And
Yeah.
were there any times when you, regretted a decision that you make with your career? Anything that you look back on and you wish that you took a different path?
Do you coming into this more online space, if you will, one of the things I think I regret probably is not investing more in somebody to help me with my message.
Mm.
And, it kind of reminded me a little bit again of one of your callers that asked about their defining, and I'm sure, I can't remember how
Oh,
their
the value
proposition.
proposition? Yeah.
Yes, their value proposition. And, it's really important to get clear on that. And so one of the steps that I did take during COVID was I did invest in an online program with a company. And I've become very, very clear on what my value proposition is, what is my message, how do I help my client? And there's something so powerful when you can get such clarity about that, so that whether you're interviewing, whether you are doing a new introductory call, or you're talking to potential clients, you're using that message in a lot of different ways.
Mhm. That's great. Yeah, I agree. I think the more you have that clarity, it just makes it so much easier to talk about it. And whether you're meeting people or yeah, doing some public speaking or going after that job, anything, or marketing yourself, right? It's all about marketing yourself, and
Yeah,
so important
yes.
that we have that clear.
And
And
I think, prior to being online, is I would introduce myself and tell people I'm an image consultant, and they're like, you could see sometimes the glaze over their eyes, like, okay, what does an image consultant do? And, when you're in person, it's very interesting. Versus being in person versus if you are doing something online, is you just need to be clear when you
Yeah.
are online and be able to articulate that. So I'm not fumbling around maybe as much and be just a lot more clarity. So it's huge.
It is. Yeah, so
Yeah.
true. And what advice or recommendations do you have for anyone who's going through a time of change and transition, which has so much uncertainty to it, to for them to stay motivated and positive, just based on your own experience?
I'm going to go back, and I kind of mentioned this before about how I went into my um, new business of definitive style 10 years ago. But I'm going to actually say this how I've kind of gone through my whole career path. And that is identifying your strengths, what you value, and really owning those. Valuing them, amplifying them, and being aware what makes you tick, what makes you who you are. I've also learned is don't wait for somebody to give you permission to
Mhm.
do what you want to do. And what I mean by that, so when I was doing my business 100% in person, I was doing a lot of workshops. I was doing speaking engagements. And so now it's transferred online, and it's giving myself permission in a lot of different areas of how I might be using my voice, how I might be doing speaking engagements, and it looks very different. But instead of waiting for someone to give you permission, is to go out there and create those opportunities for yourself.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's very sage advice, very sage wisdom. Yeah, don't wait for permission because there'll always be naysayers too, right? You've always got the
Absolutely.
naysayers,
You
and
know,
that can bring you down. Yeah.
yeah. And sometimes we wait for other people to say that we're good enough or that we're qualified enough. And when you feel confident in those gifts, those strengths, you know what? Give yourself permission to just go do it.
Yeah. Very true. Well, thank you so much for that, Annette, and for sharing about your career path and journey and your lessons. And it's time for our next break. So, when we come back, Annette and I will talk about her recommendations for living our personal brand and much, much more. Hi, I'm Lisa Downs, career and retirement transition coach and host of Reigniting You on KIXI. I guide age 40 plus professionals to gain clarity, a renewed sense of purpose, and a career transition plan within 90 days so you can lead a fulfilling life regardless of your age. If you're not sure what's next for you, I can help. Let's talk about what your future can look like. Visit yournewaspect.com or call me at 425 216 3015. That's 425 216 3015. New Aspect Coaching, fresh perspectives for your career.
Have a career transition related question or want to share your best or worst job story? Call 360-436-6496. That's 360-436-6496. Just leave a voicemail and we'll answer your question or share your story on a future show. Stay tuned for more Reigniting You with Lisa Downs.
Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that discusses timely issues and topics about career transitions for Gen Xers and Boomers. I'm your host, Lisa Downs. A reminder that if you'd like to get in touch, you can head on over to my website, yournewaspect.com. There you can take my free career transition readiness quiz, as well as sign up to receive my free weekly career tips e-newsletter, or just send me a note. That's yournewaspect.com. Well, we're here with style and image expert Annette Bond. So, Annette, let's go ahead and dive back into our conversation. So, we all have a personal brand, whether we recognize it or not. So, how do you personally define what a personal brand is and what it looks and sounds like?
So I'm going to start off with a quote by Jeff Bezos, and he says, "Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room." And so, in essence, is what people experience with you, it's what they think about you, it's what they feel about you, it's how they perceive you. As an image consultant, yes, part of it is our outer package, if you will. And what I really work with my clients on is being intentional. So when you are sharing with, how you want people to perceive you, how do you want them to think about you, it's really identifying what does that look like. So for example, if you are somebody who says, okay, I'm in a corporate position and I am a powerful businesswoman. I work with a team of people and I want them to see my creativeness. What does that look like? Maybe you're somebody who says, I really value excellence. So we all have a difference of who we are, what we value, our strengths. And so that is really the foundational process that I actually begin helping my clients is identifying, kind of going back to, we talked about this earlier about your strengths. What do you value? And what does that look like in your clothing? And I start with, it really is in my Reveal Your Radiance Academy. It is style lesson 1, where we start talking about that and then move into other pieces that are going to align with your clothing.
Great. Well, thanks for that. And I love that definition. And I'm also wondering about how we can make sure that we stay congruent with our brand, given our behavior. So, how can we make sure that those two things match consistently? And how can any type of mismatch potentially affect us personally and professionally?
I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over, but it's so foundational and it's so important is, what are your strengths and what are your values? So I'm going to use the word when I brought up excellence, and that is actually kind of my number one value, if you will. So if you are sharing with a potential employer, if you're sharing that you value excellence, but you are showing up and you are a hot mess, or your background is very cluttered, but you are telling somebody, the employer, your interviewer, that you value that, is we are actually visually, we are listening, we're almost listening with our eyes
Mhm.
more than we are what you're telling us. Here's a couple statistics, is that in milliseconds, people are forming an opinion about you.
Wow.
90% of information transmitted to the brain is visual. So when we see somebody, our brains are trying to discern, who is this person? Do I like this person? Do I want to do business with this person? And are they who they say they are? Again, I talked about the word excellence. Let's take creativity, and maybe you're in the marketing department, or you're talking about being innovative, and you're talking about being creative, and your wardrobe shows no sign whatsoever that you have any creativeness. Again, there's incongruency that's happening in our mind, and we like to our brains like congruency. Also, kind of even going into that is authenticity. another statistic says 86% of consumers say authenticity is important when deciding what brands they like and want to support.
Yeah.
In fact, that even that word authenticity, I would say 99% of the clients I work with will say to me, Annette, help me to show up more authentic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really showing who you are in a good way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And letting there be congruency.
Congruency.
Absolutely. Yes.
And what's an example of someone who you've seen or you've witnessed who might have done some damage to their brand because their behavior has been incongruent with it?
Um, you know, I'm just going to say this before we start, be who you say you are. And sometimes we think that's just common sense. I just actually want to even share, this was a personal experience that I had just very recently is I was looking to, I was interviewing graphic designers, and one of the women showed up and it truly looked like she just crawled out of bed. And, here again, when I talk about even that creativeness and that first impression, and she was such a nice woman. I mean, by the time we got done with the conversation, she was a wonderful woman, but she was going to be, if you will, be showing first impressions of my work. And I couldn't get out of my head the first impression that I had of her, because it's like, okay, this is how you showed up. What kind of work are you going to do for me? I think we've all had experiences, over this last year with Zoom calls. I say, certain people thinking, I always say many people thought they're not being seen, and they show up again and you're thinking, oh, wow, I'm not sure I would do business with them. And so it's being very aware, even though we are online and thinking it doesn't matter, it does matter. We see you, even though we're on Zoom, right?
Yeah, it still matters, right? We're still being seen, and impressions and perceptions are still being formed, as you said, in those milliseconds or nanoseconds, right?
Absolutely.
And what else would you say for how we could present our brand day to day in a way that's true to ourselves and but also supports all those different facets of our lives?
One of the things is I like to say is being intentional. So how is it you want to show up online? Really going back to those questions that, how do you want to be perceived? How do you want others to feel about you? And thinking about that when you are choosing what you're going to wear. Many people, we think that it's just how we look. And yes, our image, our style, it is very visual, but it's also, there's an energy that comes forth. We all know when we've shown up feeling like $1,000,000. We all know when we're sitting in our slouchy sweatpants or our slippers or our old t-shirt, and we feel that way, right? And so it is being very intentional. I mean, I believe just on day to day, especially if you're meeting with potential new clients.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, there's definitely times when, you put on a certain outfit or, you want to make sure that you're projecting, certain qualities about yourself and that confidence. And yeah, I definitely feel it. There are definitely times when I felt better about things, based on what I'm wearing that day and how I'm presenting myself. Yeah, as opposed to the schlumpy, frumpy knock around clothes. Right?
I think I still kind of giggle about it, but it's like a year ago, we were given permission, if you will, from
Yeah.
society. I called it was like having a snow day, that we could show up in our, cozy, comfy, non-professional kind of feel, and it was okay. And it was really interesting as I kind of watched that process go on. And as I said, I think many felt like it was kind of fun at first.
Yeah.
And it was like a snow day. And then after a while, I was hearing a lot of women, that is my client, who was feeling, okay, I'm done with this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling good anymore. I want to get back to really showing up as my best self.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they do have a limit to it. And yeah. And lately, I'm still seeing people show up to the grocery store in their pajama bottoms. And it's like, okay, can we make a little bit of an effort? You're still out in public. Yeah. Yeah. Or the constant yoga pants. It's like, oh my gosh, I'll do something different. Yeah. Over it for sure. I think I'm in that camp. For sure. So that's great. And for those who are going through the job interview process, we talked just a little bit here about online presence and that's still important. What would you advise for folks who are going through online or virtual interviews, or they're interacting? Now there's software where basically you're asked interview questions and you have to record yourself speaking directly into your webcam with no humans around. What would you recommend for folks going through those types of experiences to present themselves well in those types of situations?
Do you I'm going back to the notion of we put a lot of emphasis on how we look.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear the comment, oh, well, no one's going to see me, so it doesn't matter. And I'm going back to what I mentioned earlier about how do you feel when you show up?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of, I had done a class about, get your Zoom look ready, if you will. But thinking about what makes you feel powerful,
Mm-hmm.
what makes you feel confident, what makes you feel authentic. And, thinking about clothing, whether it's your makeup, whether it's the clothing, and that gives you that feeling. And I guarantee you that energy will come through. So are you talking specifically about that they're not going to be seen, or they will be seen, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, they will be seen, whether
Okay.
it's by people in the moment over Zoom, or it's using software that a lot of companies have where they send you a link to record yourself with just you and your camera.
Okay.
Yep.
So a couple other suggestions I have is drawing attention to your eyes. And because it's a connection, and I know this sounds like common sense, but it doesn't always happen. And that is talking to the camera,
Yep.
talking, because when you're on, depending on your level of your chair, making sure that you are looking into the camera so that they're feeling connected to you. Even for women, your eye makeup, making your eyes stand out again, because you're online and you want to make that connection. A couple other suggestions is you will never go wrong with a solid color versus a print.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of, it's not, if you will, I'm going to use this term, it's not as noisy.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it also does depend on the industry. If you are in a more creative industry like myself, I can get away with more pattern and more style. So again, think of the industry that you're in. Set intentions before you get on the camera. Instead of just like, oh, I got to get on this interview and rush into it, is giving yourself some time to kind of calm down. What do you want your viewers to feel? I'm going back to the, about your brand. What do you want them to feel about you? What do you want them to know about you? Letting that come through the camera and really kind of having almost a little knowing what that is before you get on camera instead of just rushing into it, even though sometimes it's so easy, right? I got to jump on Zoom, but giving yourself time to really articulate that and know what you want your viewers to feel.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for all those tips. I think it'd be very helpful, especially for folks who are going through that process, because the interview process is so nerve-wracking anyway. And just helping them, feel that they're putting their best selves forward, I think is great. And what's been when you think back on the clients you've worked with? So, and I always used to watch shows like What Not to Wear, and love that type of thing, and makeover shows. And but what would you say has been the most fun for you helping clients update their look and their brand?
Do you know, for me, the most rewarding thing is when a client truly owns who she is. She says, yes, I value quality. I value excellence. I value approachability, whatever that is for that woman, and that we have aligned her wardrobe with those strengths. And she looks in the mirror and she's like, dang, I look
I look
good.
good,
There,
yeah.
and there's just confidence, exuding from her. Yes,
Yeah.
that's, to me, that's the best, when she can see that her radiance shining through.
That's wonderful. I love that. Yeah. Awesome. Well, and Annette, so final question for you is how could people find you if they'd like to learn more?
So you can visit AnnetteBond.com, and I have a free ultimate style guide called 7 Ways to Go from Feeling Off to Rocking a Signature Look That's Uniquely You. And you can get that on my website at AnnetteBond.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and recommendations and your story with us. It was great to have you here on the show.
Thank you, Lisa. It was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, Annette.
Thanks,
And
Lisa.
yeah, you bet. And it's time now already for to wrap up today's show, and that means it's also time for my reignition recommendation, your weekly career transition tip, regardless of your age. And so, my tip for you this week is to play the long game. And by that, what I mean is perhaps there is something short term that you can do that can be a solution for you while you're in career transition or figuring out what it is that you want to do next. And so, rather than going for your ultimate goal right away, is there an intermediate step or something short term that you can take? Sometimes we get ourselves in the position where we want to make a change, but then the bills are coming in and keep coming in. And so we're hesitant to do something more major because we have to earn an income and put food on the table and get those bills paid. So, if that's your situation, what is something that could be a step, an intermediate step to help you get to your ultimate goal and just think long term, the long game, knowing that ultimately you will get there by taking shorter steps today that can help you. So that's my tip for you today, is to play that long game. And just a reminder that if you'd like to get in touch, you can head on over to my website, yournewaspect.com, where you can download my free career transition readiness quiz, as well as sign up for my career tips e-newsletter. That's yournewaspect.com. Well, thanks, Eric, for your support today, as always. So what are your thoughts from what Annette shared? A lot of great advice there.
Absolutely. A very stylish woman with
She is.
lots of great tips. And, the things are becoming more visual, whether we like it or not. So it might as well play up
That's
to
right.
those.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Well, join us next Monday at 3 o'clock when my guest will be Tracy Warren, author of the book Ignite Your Champions, Build Your Business by Creating Connection and Community. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week on Reigniting You.